Hey everybody, Garrett here. So for my next game, I want to have some really rich audio, and I've been looking at some audio plugins to help me with that. So today I'm going to talk about what I've found out with this Steam Audio plugin from Valve. It really doesn't have anything to do with Steam per se. You can use it on any platform other than Steam. It supports right now PC, Mac, Linux, and Android. And they've got plugins for Unity, Unreal Engine, and a straight C API that you can use. So it's pretty flexible. If you look here, there's the URL where you can get it. So let's take a look at it. Right now, again, it's in beta. So there's a lot of functionality that it doesn't have yet that they've got on their roadmap. What it does have right now is head-related transfer function, binaural audio stuff. It's got, so what that really does for you, rather than straight volume panning that you would get in a kind of really basic sound system, is it allows the listener to be able to tell if something's in front or behind and above and below based on really what's happening is reflections and the different attenuations of the frequencies that our ears use to determine whether stuff's in front or behind us. So you get a much more positional audio out of it. You can also do stuff with reflections, which is really cool. That is to say, beyond just a basic reverb. So what one of the limitations of this current system is that it requires static geometry. So you basically have to set up and bake your geometry ahead of time. So I believe they're going to work on dynamic geometry later, but that's going to be probably a much more complex system. So I don't know if they're going to get to it anytime soon. So what I've done is I set up my project, and it was really easy to do. Basically importing the package, changing some project settings, setting up a mixer, just pretty basic stuff. And then the other thing you have to do is tell it your scene geometry. So you go into your reflective surfaces and your scene geometry, your floor, your walls, that sort of stuff, and assign it these Steam audio geometry scripts and a material. So they give you a bunch of preset materials you can choose from, or you can have a custom material if you want, which is kind of nice. I kind of wish this was scriptable objects, though, but a lot easier. Anyway, I love scriptable objects. So you set up your scene geometry. So they don't give you a sample project. I've built this little thing with a basic floor and a box with a door in it. Well, not a door, but an opening in it. And then I've set up these little kind of baffles as simple occluders you can check on later. And then I've got this audio source inside, represented by this sphere, which is going to play a drum sample. The drum sample has no reverb on it. So all the reverb that you're going to hear is from the Steam API itself. And I've also got a footstep audio sound that's going to play underneath the player's feet in this first-person controller view. So let's take a listen to it right now, shall we? Okay, so let me go over what you just heard. Okay, so as I was saying, I set up the scene geometry. One of the things you have to do is set up the walls, but you also have to create these audio probes. So they're kind of like, lighting or reflection probes. Basically, you create the volume, just a straight box, and then it's just a two-dimensional set of probes right now. So there's a height above the floor, as it were, and then a horizontal spacing in there. So I've created a kind of a dense set of probes for inside the room, and then a much more coarse set for outside. And then I've sent all this geometry to the Steam plugin here with this pre-export scene button, and then baked all that geometry for it. Baking is slow, like minutes just to do this little scene. So hopefully they're going to improve on that in the future. That's probably the weakest part of the system right now. I don't know if you need to bake to use the real-time reverb, which I will show in a second. I need to kind of investigate that, but since it takes so long to bake each time, I haven't really got around to it. I'll probably do a follow-up on a video on this later if I keep looking into this system and if they keep improving it. So I've got let's start with the listener because it's pretty simple. I've attached a Steam audio listener to my first-person controller camera, just, as you would, right next to the regular audio listener, no problem. And I've set it to use all the probes. And then on the source, like the footsteps, I've got a regular Unity audio source. I've attached it to use the mixer, and I set it up to be spatialized and to use the Steam audio source. So the Steam audio source has two sets of controls, basically, one for the direct sound and one for the indirect sound. The direct sound is the sound that comes directly from the source to the listener, and that gets occluded by objects. And the indirect sound is all the probe data, basically all the reflections and whatnot. So the direct sound, you can choose some options here. Basically, this is sort of a slider between CPU and quality, how much CPU use you want, how much quality you get. I've kind of got it set for really high quality, and though I'm only using two sources, the CPU use is pretty negligible. So at least at the very simple sense, you can. I mean, it's intended to run on mobile, so it seems to be pretty good so far. I haven't stress tested it with a lot of sources or anything like that yet, so we'll see down the road. It's in beta, So here's some options. I'm not going to go over all of them because they're all described in the PDF, but basically it's whether it's going to do a simple thing or a more complex thing. So for example, the direct sound occlusion, you can either have it off like it is for the footstep sound, since I don't want the player's collider to or anything to bounce off of it, and there's nothing in between it anyway, so I just turned it off for speed. But for the drums, I've got the set all the way up. Basically, the occlusions are on, and it's a frequency dependent transmission, so the frequencies will be attenuated differently based on what's occluding it. The occlusion method in this, they have raycast, which is just basically a single raycast point to point. Is the listener in direct line of sight with the source, or a partial raycast, which is kind of like a volumetric raycast. So it's a bunch of different rays, and depending on how many are occluded, will change the degree of attenuation, degree of the volume drop off, the degree of occlusion. How's that? Air absorption and physics-based attenuation. These are basically more these drop off over distance kind of settings. I don't like the physics-based attenuation right now. It's too extreme right now. I think it really muffles all the sounds all the time and drops off way too fast. So what I've done is I've turned it off and just used the standard volume drop off that's in the regular Unity audio source settings. Direct mix level is just kind of the volume level of the direct sound. Indirect sound, again, this is all the reflections and stuff from the probes, so you could turn that on and off. If you turn it on, you can choose real time or whether you want a baked source or a baked listener. So the source can't move or the listener can't move. So you could take this drum source and bake it. I've done that. It's really slow. The resulting reverbs sound freaking terrible. I don't know why. I've played with it a bunch of times. They always sound the same. They always sound terrible. I don't know if there's anybody's reported this in the forums or not, but I don't know what's going on. But I'm sticking to real time. It sounds much better to me. Indirect mix level is the same as direct mix level in that it's just a volume slider. You could go over one though in this case, and I've actually done that. I found that this seemed to, whether it's realistic or not, I don't know, but it seemed to drop off the reverb too fast. So I'd rather hear a little bit of it farther away. So I wrote a simple script up here, this indirect audio manager. Forget all this. There's a lot of settings I'm not actually using anymore, but basically it's just a linear interpolation of distance with a minimum maximum. So it's going to alert between 1 and 2 based on distance. Really simple thing I set up. It's like one line, basically. And whether or not you're using binaural for this. So with that in mind, let's see if we can do some stuff. Let's listen to, let me turn off the footsteps. How about that? Actually, turn off the footsteps. This might cause a problem because the Unity controller hates not having footsteps. Drives me nuts. Okay, let's turn off the reflection. So this is just the direct drum sound. So now you can hear the occlusion. The occlusions right now are really severe. They've mentioned this in the forums that they're going to try to improve on this later. They also don't have refractions. They don't have sound coming from around corners right now. So that's another bunch of data they'll have to bake and reset and stuff like that. So you can hear the partial occlusion working here. Okay, so let's turn the direct off and just listen to the indirect. You can see there that the indirect also uses occlusion. All right, let's see, is there anything else I want to talk about? Let's see, did I talk about presets? I think I did. And the probes. I think that's it for now. So I might in the future do another follow-up video on this. I know they have got a probe set up for terrain, so I want to check that out. And I'm going to probably keep an eye on this project in the future and see if they improve the bake times and if they add things like dynamic geometry and refractions and stuff like that, improve the occlusions. But even, in its limited state right now, it's quite usable. I might put it into my project right now just to play around with it. I don't know. Well, until the next video, I'll see you all later.